So I want to give you a little bit, some tactics. Let's start with some tactics, as Linda mentioned, in overcoming haters, and we all have them, right? They're all out there. And if you don't have them, get concerned, because that means you're vanilla. And vanilla is boring, right? And none of us are boring. We all have a flavor to us. So the more we show up and show who we really truly are, take those proverbial masks off, the more unique, special, and different we become, the more we're going to attract haters. So I remember, this is probably about 6 years ago, I was a chief revenue officer in media. And I remember I never publicly shared awards that I would win or accomplishments that I had, for one reason. I didn't want haters to come at me, and I didn't want to hear that people thought I was full of myself or I was bragging, right? So I would never share those high moments with people. And then one day I was a keynote speaker at a charity event, and my assistant was in the back of the venue room. And she decided to live stream my talk to Facebook, unbeknownst to me, on my page. And I had no idea what was going on. And I was giving this talk, and I was sharing a lot about my personal life and things that I would have never disclosed had I known I was live on my Facebook feed. But it was a great experience, because here's what happened. I got off stage, I left the venue, I got in my car, and I saw my Facebook feed had a ridiculous amounts of notifications. And I thought, oh, something's wrong with Facebook. And I went into my Facebook page, still not knowing what had happened. And all of a sudden I started seeing the most beautiful notes. Because you did, I can too. Thank you for that inspiring message, Heather. I had no idea you were a single mother and you were able to make it to the C-suite. This tells me that I have that potential as well. I saw these incredible messages. And of course, yes, there were a couple of not so nice messages. But what I took away that day is that in those moments that I don't want to shine my light, in those moments that I want to creep back, if I can't do it for me, I need to do it for the people coming after me, or for the people that we have the possibility or opportunity to inspire. And that goes for every single one of us. Shine a light on who you are, and stand up and share your truths and share your wins and own them. And yes, some haters will come, but I choose to see haters coming as, wow, I'm finally reaching enough people that I'm beyond my inner circle. And it really is true. The more we shine our light and make the world a brighter place, the more we're going to attract all different types of people to us. But the impact that we will have, you will not be able to turn a blind eye to. It really is so positive. And I save all of those positive messages that I get in a file on my phone called Fam Love. And I totally encourage you to do the same. Whenever you get a great review of your work or feedback on a message that you share, take a screenshot of that message and put it in that album. And then on those days when the haters come for you and you're trying to remember, why is it that I do this anyways? Why did I put myself out there? When you launch that folder and you look in that album, you will remember so quickly why it is that you step into that light, you turn up your light, and you do the work to make this world a better place. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background on who I am and how I ended up joining you today, and some of the tactics that I have learned to overcome villains along the way, because there have been a few. But I will share with you the biggest villain I've ever faced is the one that lies between my own two ears. But to get to that villain, I had to clear out all of the villains that were around me. Growing up, I had grown up poor, and growing up poor had become an issue for me. For many people, it is not. But for me, I associated shame around being poor, and I felt less than because I had been poor. So for years, I never owned my true history and my background, and I hid from it. And the more we hide from shame, the more we allow shame to claim us. So in that moment, shame was my villain. You can either choose to claim your shame or allow your shame to claim you. And so I've learned to flip the script on shame and put it to work for me. I'm proud that I grew up poor, and I feel inspired every day. That's a driving factor for me. I don't want to be poor again. So it motivates me to get up every day and go to work. And the more I own that and embrace it, the stronger I've become, and the stronger you will become too, as you learn to flip the script on shame instead of allowing it to claim you. So during this time, I was coming up the corporate ladder, I was in the media business, and I was doing very well. So I attributed a lot of my self-worth to my paycheck, to my title, to my team, a lot of outside exterior things, not to who I was. And during that time, I was working side by side with another woman on the leadership team who really didn't like me. I think we've all been there before, finding a woman in the workplace that might not be our biggest fan or advocate. And I chose to turn a blind eye to that behavior. I used to think to myself, I'll just stay focused on my lane. I'll ignore her. I'll keep delivering amazing results. And at some point, she's going to have to turn the corner and say, oh, Heather's doing a great job. That was the wrong answer. Turning a blind eye to bad behavior is never the answer. In fact, what I've learned is we're actually teaching people how to treat us. And while this woman would treat many people on the executive team fantastic, I was allowing her and, in fact, teaching her to treat me poorly and badly. And over time, not overnight, but over the years, it really started eroding at my confidence. And over a few years' time, I started showing up as a B-rate, watered down version of myself. And that was really hard because when something happens slowly, it's not a big light bulb moment where all of a sudden it happened. I wasn't even aware of it. But the funny thing is, somehow my body was, somehow my back started giving way. I started losing my hair. It was as if the universe was trying to get my attention to say, hey, Heather, this is not who you are. You're going down the wrong path. And the other thing I learned is that as I grew smaller in hopes that she wouldn't notice me and that she'd move on, she was growing in strength. The more I would shrink myself, the more I would dim my light, the more hers would ignite. And dimming your light is never the answer. Our goal to be in this world is to make this world a brighter place. And I challenge you and beg you to amplify your light. I wish I had turned mine up years ago. So as I had become this B-rate version of myself, as this woman had really started stepping into her power, as I continued to shrink, I got a phone call that the CEO I had worked for 14 years had become ill, and he had elevated his daughter to replace him. Now, about a month before this had happened, I was sick of feeling awful. And I decided to run a personal ad campaign for myself, to myself, about creating confidence in myself and challenging myself to start stepping up. Frequency in messaging sells. And that's what I did for 20 something years in the media business. This is why McDonald's runs 10 commercials every, 4 hours. Well, as I was saying, I was creating confidence. I had this really clear goal. I attached a visual image to that goal, and I would look at it every day. I started wearing my power colors because we all have certain colors that we feel bring out our best. Mine are red and blue. And anytime I feel afraid or nervous, I start rocking those colors. I started leaving messages on the bottom of my shoes. I can, I will, I am enough. I started practicing my affirmations over and over again. I started leaning into the fam love folder and remembering why I need to show up as that powerful version of me and who I had the potential to inspire, why I was doing this to begin with. And over that month, I started to feel a shift. And thank goodness I had been putting that work in. When the new CEO took over, I got the email that she wanted to meet with me immediately. And on that 3-hour drive over to her office, I was so incredibly nervous. But I started listening to this playlist that I only use. I call it the playlist of my life. And it is the songs that fire me up beyond belief. And if you don't have a playlist for your life, you need to become your number one cheerleader and your biggest fan. Put that playlist together and only use it in those moments when you need it. and remind yourself how strong you are, you're actually priming your brain through music to let yourself know, I'm about to do something big. I'm going to go in and I'm going to kill this. And you will prime your brain and you will set yourself up for success. I entered that office not knowing what was going on, and that woman was all smiles, so excited to see me. She asked me to sit down, and she stood up in her power pose and leaned across the table laughing. And I sat silently in that chair after 14 years, not knowing what I was about to hear. And that's when she explained to me that now that she was CEO, she no longer needed a chief revenue officer and therefore had no need for me. I sat for a moment and remembered something I learned years ago, which is in difficult moments, never react, always respond. And I thought, take a deep breath, don't react. I slightly smiled, not a big smile, but a little grin. I'll be on my way. And she said, oh no, you need to sign one of these memos. And she gave me two memos. One said, Heather's been fired. The other one said, Heather Monahan, a wonderful employee, is going on to do amazing things. And we're so excited for her, blah, blah, blah. And I knew what that meant. If I wanted that beautiful memo to go out, I was going to have to sign the stack of papers that were behind the beautiful memo, which were ultimately a gag clause that would say I could never make a disparaging comment about the company or her. And if I was willing to sign that, I'd get a really big check as a parting gift. But after being treated badly for so long by this woman, and finally learning to create some confidence in myself, instead of reacting, I responded with power. I said, I didn't write either one of these memos. I won't be signing either one of them. And if you have nothing else to say to me, I'm on my way. And I took all of the power out of that room in that moment. Her smile disappeared immediately. And I held my head high and got to my car. And then, of course, I cried my entire 3-hour ride home because I had no idea how I was going to earn a paycheck. One thing I had left out is, as a single mother, I had signed a non-compete, non-solicit for 18 months in the industry that I was an expert in. I had over 20 years of expertise and contacts, and I could not work in that industry any longer. So I cried the whole ride home. I went under a weighted blanket and tried to calm myself down. And then I noticed within 24 hours, no one was calling me. No one was even reaching out. And I thought, something's not right here. I'm going to post that I've just been fired. And I took to LinkedIn. And if you are not on LinkedIn, I challenge you to get on now, start showing up every day and shining that light on who you are. This is where business gets done. And this is where leaders lead through their content. You will start attracting people to you. And thankfully, I had been showing up for a year before I put this post up. So I had built some community. And I put a post up that said, I have just been fired. And if I've ever done anything to help you, I need to hear from you right now. And my friends called and they said, take that post down. You look horrible, pathetic. You don't want people to know you were fired. You'll never get another job. And I checked in with the one voice and opinion that matters. And that's my own. And that's your own for you. And I thought, I don't feel pathetic. I don't feel like I did anything wrong. That lady didn't like me. She fired me, which is her choice, but it doesn't make me a bad person. And then I Googled, has anyone successful ever been fired? And it turns out that Mark Cuban's been fired, J.K. Rowling's been fired, Oprah Winfrey's been fired, Steve Jobs had been fired. And I decided to look at it a different way. I decided to say, in good company, if you haven't been fired, you should get fired. This is my launch point. So I kept that post up. I didn't take it down. I returned other self-limiting beliefs back to them. And I said, I am going to keep this post up and I am going to stand in my power that I am proud I got fired. I don't want to work for that woman. That post went viral and it landed me on the Elvis Duran show. And halfway through that interview, Elvis Duran looked at me and said, well, Heather, obviously you're writing a book. But I wasn't writing a book. I had never even thought about writing a book. Anyone here ever have a sibling that was the smart one? Anyone ever have that? Okay, I see some smiles. Okay, so my sister had the perfect score on her SATs. She skipped grades. She was so smart. She has a PhD. Obama was her instructor at University of Chicago. I always thought that since she was so smart, I couldn't be smart. And if you're not the smart one, how do you write a book? And I had to decide to fire that story, that negative story that I was telling myself. And I challenge you today, when we are done here, to identify that story that's been holding you back and rewrite it into a powerful one that supports you and advances you instead of limits you. In that moment, Elvis Duran spoke his truth to me. I decided to accept his belief and own it with conviction. So if you ever think your words can't impact the trajectory of another person's life, don't underestimate them. They are so incredibly powerful. And I'm so grateful to that man that day. I jumped on the plane to head home and I Googled, how do you write a book? And I really did. And it said, you just have to write. Don't overthink it. And I thought, well, I've got some free time. I don't have a job. I might as well start writing. So I did. And I had no idea if I'd finish the book. I had no idea if anyone would ever read the book or if I'd sell a copy. But I knew I had something to say. So halfway through writing the book, I thought, I need to find someone who's ahead of me who can help me progress more rapidly. So I went on LinkedIn again and I searched for editors that I was connected with. And I found my editor, Ryan, and I hired him. I invested in myself, and investing in yourself is the best investment you will ever make. Within 5 months, Ryan and I had that book done. And 2 weeks before it was going to go live for the whole world to see, I remember thinking I should share this with my family. So I sent it to my mother, my brothers, my sister, my father, and crickets. And I hate crickets. So I called my sister and I said, why aren't you calling? And she said, well, as an attorney, I have to tell you, you're going to be sued by everyone you call out in the book. And you're also going to be sued by Jen Sincero. You are a badass because your book is a knockoff of hers. I remember hanging up and crying. And then I called my father and I said, why haven't you and mom called? He said, well, your mother's not speaking to you. She doesn't like that you're sharing how difficult your childhood was. And she'd rather have it kept a secret. She doesn't want you to write the book. And thankfully, I made a really good decision in that moment. I called someone who was light years ahead of me. I called Ryan, my editor. I said, Ryan, we can't write the book. My sister is an attorney and she said, I'm going to be sued and my mother's really mad at me. And he started laughing. And he said, Heather, how many books has your family written? And I said, well, none. Why? And he said, how many have I written? And I said, 19. And he said, who do you think you should be seeking advice from on the topic of writing and publishing books? And I thought, you've written 19 of them. And he said, that's right. And I learned such a powerful lesson that day. Never seek advice or direction from someone who hasn't been where you are going. And to really ruin this for you, because I have to, because I'm so proud, in 2021, well, first of all, if you don't have a Google alert on yourself, take it out right now, okay? Because you want to be the one that gets news on you first before anybody else does. So I have a Google alert on me. And in 2021, it was October, I believe, I got a Google alert that said Forbes, Heather Monahan. And I thought, why? My new book doesn't come out for a month. Why is Forbes writing about me right now? And I clicked on that link and it was the top 5 business books of the year, 2021, that every woman needs. And I'm scrolling and I get to number 3 and it's Heather Monahan, Confidence Creator. And I was dumbfounded. I also realized good things take time. Great things can take a little bit longer, right? I thought in 2018 that was going to happen when I launched the book. It took a couple more years. But then I scrolled to number 4 and it was Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass, the book that my sister had thought I would be sued for. And I'm really pleased to let you know, I was never sued by anybody. And my attorney with HarperCollins Leadership told me that there is a finite window of time you can be sued for a book, and that time has already elapsed. So pretty exciting news. I never got sued, and my first book hit the Forbes top 5 list. So I decided to move forward with Ryan and publish that book, as you know. And the first week it came out, it trumped Donald Trump for #1 on the business biography list. And yes, I have the screenshot to prove that one. Pretty proud of that one too. So that led me to Google, how do you sell books? I had no idea. I was a rookie author and it said speak. And I thought, great, I've been speaking my whole entire career. And so I started calling companies and saying, hey, if you buy X amount of books, I'll come in and speak for free. And then one day I called a company and they said, what's your speaker fee, Heather? And I thought, speaker fee? I don't even know what that means. So I Googled speaker fee. And it turns out in 2018, Gary Vaynerchuk was getting paid $350,000 for a 60-minute keynote. And that's when I decided I need to shift gears and start leaning into the speaking business. So I started contacting every speaking agent in the world, and I got hired to interview Sarah Blakely live on stage for a huge sales conference in Boston. And my speaking business took off until the pandemic hit and it disappeared. And no one did virtual speaking. No one was, I didn't even know what virtual speaking was. I didn't know if you needed a special degree for that. But I decided to move fast and break things. I went to social media and I looked at the DMs. I looked, what problem can I solve from home? What do people ask me for other than my book or speaking? And I saw people were asking me for coaching and consulting. So I put a post up, never having an official coaching or consulting business. I said, launching my first ever coaching and consulting business. If you want to join, there are limited spots. Send me a DM so you don't get cut out. And I sold that program out immediately, way too cheaply. I didn't charge enough at first, but learned a lesson and started building testimonials. And if you don't have testimonials and reviews of your work, start asking today. So I built that consulting business, which is what ultimately ended up landing me my board of directors seat on HealthLink. One of my clients was a CFO at HealthLink. We built a great rapport and it led to another door opening. So none of this has been an easy journey. It certainly has not been linear. But during that pandemic, I remember thinking, I want to go bigger. I'm going to see who the #1 best-selling author is for females. And at the time, it was Rachel Hollis. So I Googled who is her agent and I found the woman's name. I reached out to her and I started pitching her on me. And she said, you know what, I'm interested. Send me a book proposal. And I said, well, I don't know what a book proposal is. What is that? And she said, well, this is where the conversation ends, Heather, goodbye. And I said, before you hang up, answer me one question. If you had a family member that wanted to write a book proposal, who would you send them to? And she said, well, Peter Economy, of course. And I said, Jill, you're going to hear back from me soon. So I went to Twitter, I stalked Peter Economy, I tweeted at him, Peter, you're never going to believe this. Jill wants you and I to work together. He tweeted right back, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let's get on a call. We got on a call and I told him everything that happened. He was laughing. And he said, you can hire me for a book proposal, Heather, but it's going to cost you. And boy, was he right. It did. So I jumped into the unknown. I invested in myself again and doubled down. And Peter and I created this book proposal. I went back to Jill, so excited, and said, Jill, here's what you've been waiting for. Unfortunately, Jill didn't feel the same way. She said no. She said, you can do better. I went back to Peter. I told him we could do better, and we did another book proposal. I went back to Jill, and she said no. 14 times I redid that book proposal. 14 times Jill said no, until lucky number 15. And the great news is that I came up in business through sales, and I led sales teams my entire career. And one thing I learned in sales is no doesn't mean anything. I'm focused on getting the one yes. Most people would give up at 3 to 4 no's. Never be most people. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because now my new book, Overcome Your Villains, is with my agent, Jill, and HarperCollins leadership. And yes, when we first shopped it during a pandemic, the first 8 pitches we put out there were no's, until the next 6 were all yes. Stay focused on that yes. Don't let the no be your villain. We moved forward, we launched the book, and the book started doing fantastic. And was it seamless and easy? No, because it's a virtual world and very different than what I was used to having in 2018 when everything I was doing was in person. Has it been a challenge with shipping delays? Heck yes. Have there been one challenge after another? Absolutely. But like I mentioned before, good things take time and great things take a little bit longer. So I'm staying the course. I'm focused on delivering the book and getting that book to the Wall Street Journal #1 list, which is one of my big goals for last year and again for this year. But I'm not quitting. I'm staying focused and committed to those goals. Not sure when they're going to happen, but I am sure they will. So I'm hoping that you all can stay focused on your big goals, overcome those villains. And the more you clear out that space around you, and the day that lady thought she fired me, I had actually fired my #1 villain. And that's what allowed these really positive people to start showing up in my life. And as I let more and more positive people in, I no longer wasted time thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do when I see this lady? Oh gosh, how am I going to show up if she comes at me again? So much of my time was ruminating around how I was going to manage this negative person in my life. And the minute that person was gone, I started dealing with my ultimate villain, myself. And I decided to rewrite that narrative. I started to speak kindly to myself the way I spoke to my son. I decided to lean into those affirmations and remind myself that messaging and frequency sells. And the more I can speak in a positive way to myself, the more that's going to impact me. And those are the tips and tricks that help me start going for more. I started forgiving myself for beating myself up for years. And I started letting go of that which I could not control and just stepping into that knowing that things would work out. I dropped the labels. I dropped that my sister was the smart one and I was the social one. I decided to blow up the lanes and start living lanelessly. You can take your unique skills and talents wherever you want. When you overcome your villains and decide to squash that one that lives between your own 2 ears. So I'm hopeful that you are all able to squash those villains, overcome those villains. And as Linda had mentioned, I have a 3-step process in my new book, Overcome Your Villains, that I wanted to share with you. And then happy to open it up to any questions you guys have or comments or conversation. But in my new book, the 3-step process is called BACK: beliefs, action, and knowledge. And I'll use the example of getting fired, how this system works. Okay, when I walked out of that woman's office that day, my belief in that moment was, I've lost everything. I was literally saying that out loud. I've lost everything. Once I got to the car, I didn't want her to hear that. But I really believed I had lost everything. That belief was a lie. So step 1 in this process, when you're facing a villain or need to overcome a challenge, my #1 step is this: look at that belief and distill it into the most simplistic shred of fact, if there is any. When I break that belief down that I've lost everything, that wasn't true. I had my health. I had my network. I had all my expertise, all my experiences. I had my business acumen. I had my relationships. I hadn't really lost anything, but I did lose one thing. I lost a paycheck. But as I distilled it to that simple belief, I remembered I'd gotten paychecks from different places in my life. And it was possible for me to get a paycheck from somewhere else. I didn't know where in that moment, but distilling that belief to the most simplistic shred of fact, if there is any, usually there's none, will help you to start moving forward. Step 2 is always take action. Even if it is small action, even if it's a little baby step, the key is to take action. So my action step was to put that post up on LinkedIn. I've just been fired. I've ever helped you. I need to hear from you now. Take that action step, because that one action step can start a domino process like that posted, landing me on the Elvis Duran show. Nothing happens until you take action. And step 3 is knowledge, being very intentional about the knowledge that you're accessing, only taking advice and direction from those who have been where you want to go. And step 3 in my process was sitting in front of Elvis Duran, someone who was light years ahead of me in success and who chose to speak a truth and a belief into me that I chose to accept. So be really intentional about who you are taking advice from, what content you're surrounding yourself with, what TED Talks you're watching, what Instagram feeds you're following, and what events like this you're showing up for. But be sure to be intentional about it and surround yourself often with the kind of content that supports and stretches you to grow. And that 3-step process back will help you to overcome any challenge in business and life. And it works every time, all the time. And I'm living proof. So I'd love it, Linda, if we could open it up if anyone has questions or if anyone has comments.
And in fact, I'm going to take us off recording, and the rest of this will be really private. And